Hello, this is Debbie Horovich, and this is a recording, the very first recording that I'm making of Authority Backstory Radio. And this is going to eventually turn into something like perhaps a podcast, a special series of interviews with authorities produced by Social Sparkle and Shine Publishing, and to introduce important influencers to our communities. So I wanted to take this opportunity today to just get started with the idea of everyday publishing and storytelling. And this is a little bit of my backstory, just to introduce you to me and to who I am, so that you know where I came from. If you're thinking about working with me, or if you've ever wondered, what the heck did I do to get where I'm going? This is a little bit of that story. So the truth is, it's really not uncommon for people to ask me about how I became a fairy godmother book publisher and an author promoter. And after asking myself and wondering, I was really forced to explore where this desire to help storytellers fulfill their life potential by helping them publish and promote their books came from for me. And the truth is, way back in 2012, 5 years ago now, I was like so many other social media consultants. I had finally accepted what was my dream job, J-O-B, in my brand new specialty, my brand new career, which was social media consulting, or social media community management at that point. And I had accepted a brand new job at a tech startup after 3 years of adding to my already established ad agency media buyer reputation. I was now adding this new title. And in a couple of years, I had a roster of client consulting engagements and experiences that had included Nissan Cars, Cougar Boots, Foodland Ontario, Ontario Plastics Coalition, which was a policy awareness group, and a wide variety of Toronto startups and individual business owners, as well as my existing full-time employers who were a technology app startup. And really what I wanted to do was to leverage my full-time job and activities into a brand new reputation for myself. So I was struggling to break out of a 15-year, very niche, very defined career that I had actually been laid off of 2 jobs in a 12-month period, right around at 2007 and 2008, whereas there were so many changes happening in the industry. And what I decided to do was do all of my job hunting on social media. And it got me a little bit of a reputation for being someone who really knew what to do with social media, when so many of the agency and clients at that point, 10 years ago, were still looking at Facebook and sometimes even MySpace like something that only kids were using, and that it had no value or opportunity for advertisers. And oh, how things have changed. And, the truth is, I was working really a lot. I was very busy. I was working full time, plus working evenings and weekends as a social media person. At that time, Toronto was all parties and launches and introductions and events and meetings. And I was going to, 3 and 4 events in a week, sometimes even more than one event in a day. And the bottom line is, for me, really, the truth is, I was exhausted. I was seriously underpaid, mostly because I was undervaluing myself. And I was only working with the clients who came to me through community connections and through referrals. And I needed a way to move the positioning of my reputation from invisible social media community manager to one of being much more visible. And being one of the more visible leaders and innovators in the industry of social media, which at that time was very, very new. I wanted more success as a consultant, and I knew that increasing my own visibility, whether through my employer's activities for my own benefit or for my own benefit, it would definitely help me at least establish more proof, more social proof, and result in more speaking and consulting opportunities for me. So when I started coming home from most events with a book in hand, one of my favorite free swaggy items in event gift bags and the bonus with purchase, I started wondering how these people who I'd never heard of before were suddenly working with all the big brands, starting to offer keynote talks at conferences, and clearly taking their own careers into their hands. The next opportunity I had to launch an interview series was that same fall season when I was exploring webinar platforms for my then employer. I was surprised to discover that my employers did not want me using their brand or my salaried hours for them to create any content that could be publicly seen. They expected me to launch their platform perfectly with no technical testing or public feedback. But I knew that I needed to do some of that in order to be able to decide which webinar platform to use for them. So I decided to use my own side hustle agency as the host brand for a new interview series that I would create and launch on my own time in evenings and weekends. And if and when it worked, I could show my employers how it had worked. Well, I'll tell you, it almost worked too well. I was fascinated by Google's new technology for creating live streaming videos on YouTube. And as a tech dummy, they were investing a ton of money into making their social platform, Google Plus, compete with Facebook's new video sharing abilities. And so I wanted to use Google Plus videos, live streaming to YouTube, and then later shared to all of my social channels to test the technology tool and to see if it could work for my employers. But I knew that this was going to take a lot of time and energy to pull off without hiring help or buying courses. And if I was going to be sacrificing my personal time and energy for my employer's benefit, I would need to be producing a show that would be fascinating and valuable to me personally. I was still such a beginner though, with limited visibility in comparison to so many of my peers I saw at events and online, and I was certainly no expert in the video tool that Google was providing. So I decided to theme my program around learning how book authors were becoming published and successful. I knew that there had to be some sort of trick that they were using, but I had no idea what it was. My whole job and side hustle and side activities while watching TV were about testing social media, democratized media channels, for how I could leverage them for myself and for my clients and my employers. And honestly, my whole life had been about the search for a platform for myself, for my identity, where I could be recognized and validated in a way that I've never felt before in my life, even through my childhood. As I was attending, 3 times a week, sometimes social media events and conferences and brand launch parties as a part of my day job and both my side hustle, I started to recognize the people who were suddenly everywhere. New social media consultants like myself who had almost overnight transformed into in-demand speakers and ambassadors. What stood out to me was that many of them were also book authors. The book authors at every event were the most visible and memorable people in attendance because attendees and VIPs or special guests all left with a copy of the book and some social media documentation of their lives growing their own personal brand and socializing with this well-known book author. So I decided that since I didn't have any expertise or experience around book publishing, or even book authoring at that time, I just wanted to become a book author myself. what I decided to do was just to position myself as the enthusiastic and well-informed or well-connected host of the show. And of course, the owner of the show, the person who's responsible for every production detail and every outcome, of course, but I knew that deferring to experts was exactly how I would finally be able to up-level my own reputation as a YouTube consultant. And maybe at the same time, by aligning myself socially with these successful book authors and influencers, I would be recognized and invited to some of the same opportunities that they were getting themselves. And I knew that if I spent enough time immersed in the world of successful book authors and publishers, I would eventually have the knowledge and the courage to become a book author myself. Now that's enough for today that I'm going to share with my story. I will come back in just a very short period of time with another episode to share with you a little bit more about where I started and how I became a fairy godmother, book publisher, and author promoter. And what I'm doing now these days, my focus as a digital media and marketing consultant and speaker. So I will see you next time. Thank you very much.